Hey, Clemson family, let's talk about one of the position groups that needs to make the biggest improvement on the offense this year. That would be with the wide receivers. A lot of possibilities there, a lot of potential, but we'll see if they can get the job done.
I'm Daniel Shirley. A lot of luck may be involved with some help, so we'll see if that happens. And we'll talk a couple more opponents as well as we get going and get close to the start of the season.
Yep, we'll run through Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, and actually there's a lot to go through on both of those. I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. This is season 2 with our high-tech background and extreme awesome video here, right? But we figure it's better than throwing a still photo up there for you YouTube listeners to see all the time. You can also catch us on your favorite podcast apps. You can catch our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com, and find us on social media. I know a few new followers are popping up here and there on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, on Facebook. You can find us all those places. We're usually busiest on Twitter, or I guess I should say X. Just look for at Clemson Kickoff. No X.
Twitter. It's not X. I'm not calling it X. I'm not using X Plus or whatever TweetDeck used to be. It's Twitter, and we're on Twitter.
You're not going to re-X our friends of the program like Matt Michelle and John Blau and those guys, T.O.
No, it says post now. Repost. Come on.
It's a retweet.
Tweet became a word. It's an
Exactly.
actual word, and you screwed that up. So we are Twitter and tweeting and retweeting everything.
Look, I've only worked in marketing a little bit. I think that was a pretty bad move by Mr. New Twitter owner who shall remain nameless, right? Just like
ridiculous. Yeah.
Just like we'll leave the school down I-26 nameless, right? So
That's
let's
right.
get into the wide receivers led by a guy from down I-26 who made a very good decision a little more than a year ago. Antonio Williams had a great season last year, a breakout. Despite not being on campus for the spring, he was true fall enrollee freshman, did a nice job with that group. Some of it was because of health, injuries to Bo Collins last year, injuries to Adam Randall, another guy who was a freshman last year, looked good in the spring, had high hopes for him, just had that knee injury that tripped him up. A lot of injuries around that room have caused a lot of problems. They have lost Joe Ngata to the NFL. Why did injuries make me think of Joe Ngata? I'm not real sure. He had a really nice year last year. I was glad to see that. Troy Stellato still hurt again this year. Brandon Spector trying to put things together. Another emerging freshman from last year, Cole Turner, expected to contribute and kind of stretch defenses vertically in that new Garrett Riley system. Tyler Grisham hopefully has a full cabinet to work with to cook meals in this new offense. You got to hope.
Yeah, it feels like they're as close to being healthy as they've been in a couple of years, right? I mean, you mentioned Joe Ngata and Ladson, right? I mean, those guys just could not stay healthy. Last year, Bo Collins hurt for feels like the entire second half of the season. Stellato really hasn't been healthy since he's been on campus. And you can't, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. It's just bad luck. But you heard Dabo say last week, that they just need to get lucky at receiver and be healthy. And if they are, I don't think it's any doubt that there's talent there. Antonio Williams was a revelation last year. I mean, when's the last time they had a true freshman, not an early signee, come in and have that kind of impact? Sammy Watkins, maybe. Am I misremembering him? I don't think he was an early enrollee. So, I mean, it's been a while since they've had a guy like that step in and come late and just like boom, this guy means something to this team. Sounds like they might have a couple of those guys this year at that position. So in Tink Kelly and Tyler Brown. So it just the guys we've mentioned, Randall, Williams, Bo Collins, Spector, and then these two freshmen kind of pushing them a little bit. It feels like there's some real depth, some playmaking, and some explosiveness in that wide receiver group, and they need all of that.
Yep. And I think the question is going to be who will emerge as Klubnik's lead target. When Cade Klubnik needs to find a guy Who's going to be his Hunter Renfrow or his Justin Ross or his T. Higgins? Boy, the old embarrassment of riches phrase right there, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, this room has that potential. Just guys everywhere. I mean, Adam Randall, all world talent. If he's 100% healthy, you'd kind of like to see him break out against Florida State, wouldn't you? But you know, where is that going to develop? And we'll get into the tight ends in a minute, but you're hopefully going to see Jake Brenningstool uh,
Right.
become a
Absolutely.
much bigger part of the passing game. And I think he can split out wide like Jordan Leggett did a lot. I was rewatching one of the old games, the championship in Tampa Bay, and just Leggett's presence out there on the field and his ability to run a crisp route, get into space, get open. I think Brenningstool is look, I was a huge Davis Allen fan last year, but I think Brenningstool has more of that Leggett type ability in him, possibly than any possibly more than any tight end we've seen at Clemson since he left.
Since Leggett, yeah, I think so. I think he's a better athlete.
Hmm.
But Davis Allen was just so reliable, right?
Yeah.
And you knew where he was going to be. If he had to run, if his route was 8.5 yards, he was going to run 8.5. He wasn't going to run 9. He wasn't going to run 7.5. He was going to run 8. And if you got him the ball, he was, most times was going to catch it. Brinkstool is just such an athletic specimen that you're waiting for him to break out, right? And you're waiting for him to become that guy. And Dabo talks about it all the time. How serious are you? Do you want to be great, or you just want to be here and be a good player and be on the team? Nothing wrong with those guys either. But if you want to be great, you've got to put in the work and you've got to be serious about it. And if he is, I mean, the talent's undeniable. He was the number one tight end in the country that year when he came out, and Brock Bowers was in that class. So, I mean, we've seen what Brock Bowers has become at Georgia. Can Brenningstool become close to that in this offense? We'll find out, but he is a huge piece of the puzzle this year. And like you said, with him, Collins, Randall, Williams, Turner, the two young guys. I mean, there is a lot of talent and there are a lot of weapons for a first-year starter at quarterback. And we hear it all the time in football. The tight end is the quarterback's best friend. Well, then let's see it. Let's absolutely see it and see him be a big piece of that offense going forward.
Yep. He probably will move around a good bit up against the line, out wide. That can help his cause in a way that just wasn't happening the last couple of years with Brandon Streeter and before him, Tony Elliott running the Clemson offense. That's going to help him out. If I had to pick one guy who's going to lead the team in receptions and or yards, most likely, I mean, I guess the chalk is on Antonio Williams, but I really want to say Adam Randall here. Just his athletic ability, his physique. He's got that kind of Mike Williams build almost. He's got that. If he can still cut, if he can still be quick, out of the blocks, look out, because it's not so much about straight line speed. We've seen how well Justin Ross could do without just being blazing speed. Other Clemson receivers since Sammy Watkins. I mean, Ladson was a blazer. Where were the hands? I
Right.
mean, speed isn't everything in my world, at least. And I don't think it is for Dabo Swinney. I don't think it was for Jeff Scott. I don't think it is for Tyler Grisham. If Randall has taken full advantage of his time on the side to kind of work things out, I've mentioned a few times he was targeted in some key third down situations or some second and longs last year. They obviously have faith in him as far as where he's going to be in the right place at the right time. I don't know we're going to see quite that security blanket like Hunter Renfrow, or even I feel like Uyunglele had with Bo Collins, his former high school teammate. But I would love to see Randall emerge as the threat that defenses have to respect the most. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And look, the offense is different, right? So we're going to see what the new offense looks like, and all that is absolutely part of this. But remember the days, and they're not that long ago, of a T. Higgins or a Mike
Yeah.
Williams or Justin Ross running a 7-yard slant, catching the ball, big body guy, cornerback can't get around him, and you get a 15-yard gain. And now sometimes you break it and you get a 60-yard gain. That's fine. But it's 2nd and 8, and we run a slant, and you get 15 yards, first down, offense starts rolling. That was missing the last 2 years. It just absolutely was. Why? Injuries were part of it. Drops were a big part of it. We know that, how many drops this group had the past couple of years. So I feel like Adam can be that guy, right? I look, the 40-yard dash, I know everybody loves the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. How many times in a game does a guy run 40 yards straight?
Yeah.
In a college game, how many times? 2, maybe. So it's not that, I mean, you're not going to turn down speed, but you have to be able to catch the ball in traffic. You have to be able to use your body. You have to be able to be precise with your routes. And all of those were problems the last 2 years. And I think he can be a big part of that.
For sure. And the other thing, let's not let this go unsaid, and we don't have to dwell on it. The blocking from both the wide receivers
Absolutely.
and the tight ends. I know Davis Allen was a pretty capable blocker. I think Sage Ennis is respected as a capable blocker and might be the guy who gets the second most snaps behind Brenningstool at tight end. Josh Sapp.
Don't forget Josh Sapp. Right.
Yeah, his father was in school while we were on campus there, getting our degrees as well, and just a heck of a guy. I had a ton of respect for him dealing with all he had to do. So you hope Josh Sapp is hardwired like that, with that work ethic, with that, hey, I'll do anything you ask kind of thing. I mean, his father converted from quarterback to linebacker while he was
in the
there.
Same career. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And it helped him make the NFL that way as well.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Yeah, but Patrick Sapp was one of my favorites, right? Because of the team came first. Yep. Right. Everything was about the team. I'll do whatever. If I got to play quarterback in the Peach Bowl, I'll play quarterback in the Peach Bowl. If I got to play rush in or outside linebacker, I'm going to play that position. And you're hearing a lot of that from Dabo and the other coaches talk about Josh. So I would say don't overlook him, because I think he's going to have a role in this offense as well.
Totally agree. So we need a lot more complete football out of both of those positions than we've seen the last couple of years, each for different reasons. And the first test will be Duke, which, as we record this, a week from tonight. So
a week from tonight. How about that?
I mean, here we are. Thank goodness.
Love it.
About dang time. Catch us on Twitter /X at Clemson Kickoff. Check out our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. Let's go ahead and get into a couple of opponent previews. And let's start with Notre Dame, which, I don't think most people see this as the biggest game of the year for Clemson. It's Florida State in September. However, it could end up being the biggest game of the year. They looked good against Navy. You're supposed to look good against Navy. Sam Hartman feeling right at home. We're all quite familiar with how good Sam Hartman can be.
Yep.
That was another game I thought about rewatching the other day, and I'm like, I think I'll skip past that, because there's some painful stuff in that game for sure. Thank goodness Clemson came out with a win.
You have the fast forward button on in that game for sure.
Yeah, and usually I'm doing 9 other things while that thing's just running in the background, and those games are on. I'll get into another game I rewatched later on, but I was texting you about that one. Notre Dame, new coordinators on both sides of the ball, I believe. Tommy Rees left and went to Alabama. They have Gerard Parker running the show now. He and Sam Hartman completely on the same page, at least in week 1 against a lesser opponent. We'll know more about Notre Dame by the time they get here. They did lose one of their top running backs. They've lost some receivers, but former Clemson player Chancey Stuckey is their receivers coach, a guy who I would want on Dabo Swinney's short list if we ever needed to replace the receivers coach here. Defense has lost some talent as well, but very deep in the front 7, and they're never completely struggling in the secondary. This is going to be a tough one.
It is. I think it is right there with the Florida State game as far as, everybody does this. We do it at The Athletic, rank the games, right? Who's Florida State's number 1, Notre Dame's number 2, and it might be 1A and 1B, however you want to look at it. I watched that whole game Saturday. No, and Sam Hartman looked great, and no surprises. I mean,
Right.
you saw, if you're a Clemson fan, you saw him play at Wake Forest for what felt like a decade, and he was that guy every year. Now, are you? Can you put more pressure on him than Navy did? Yes, absolutely, because there was no pressure on him. Navy really struggled. Navy looked slow. I mean, and I don't think Notre Dame looked quick. Navy just looked really, really slow. And I know that we all know what Navy is and what they face as a football program. I felt like there are still questions about Notre Dame. I do. There are no questions about Sam Hartman, none. Right. But there's questions about Notre Dame on the outside at receiver. Do they scare you? No, I don't think so. We'll see.
Maybe with last year's secondary inexperience on inexperience, maybe that would have scared me. When you have the experience edge, that makes me feel a little better.
And their defense doesn't scare me at all. Absolutely does not worry me. I watched that game, and look, Navy threw 5 passes. They completed 1. They had 2 receivers run into each other on one and knock the ball from each other on the other one. So they're not going to scare you defensively because of their limitations. A, they don't throw the ball. B, they can't throw the ball. But I think Notre Dame can be had on defense. Now, you've got to go do it, and you've got to move the ball. And your first-year quarterback has got to play better than your 2-year starter did last year up there, and better than Cade played up there too. So there's a lot of time between now and that game. Right. But I didn't see anything Saturday other than Sam Hartman that I went, oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Now he covers up a lot of stink because of how good he is. And I think he's going to be a heck of an NFL quarterback. But you can put pressure on him. We've seen Clemson put pressure on him in the past. And, I think he can be pressured with that Notre Dame group around him. And I don't think that their wide receivers scare you where you go, oh, well, we can't blitz because we've got to be covering. We've got to be conservative and cover. I think you can absolutely put some pressure on him.
Yep, you can force errors out of Sam Hartman. We've seen it in the past. And I think by then he's going to be pretty comfortable with the system, with the teammates around him. I don't think he's going to miss the mesh by the time we line up to play against those guys. So,
right, he's not in the mesh anymore. That's right.
Yeah. Let's also skip ahead to Georgia Tech real quick. Again, these are later in the year matchups. Brent Key basically will have coached a full season at the helm of Georgia Tech. They made what I think was a smart decision to get rid of Jeff Collins. I think from Clemson's point of view, it's an unfortunate decision that they got rid of Jeff Collins. It would have helped the Tigers quite a bit had he stuck around and kept stumbling around. Brent Key put energy into that team. I mean, we're talking about Garrett Riley bringing energy, Cade Klubnik bringing energy. Brent Key did exactly that last year. They got on a much better footing in the second half of last year. It's shown up in recruiting. I don't know that it's really going to make an immediate impact in the talent level on the field. I believe they chose Haynes King as the quarterback, I think they have Zach Pyron and a couple other capable guys. So who knows who the quarterback will be by November if everybody's getting, continued shots on the field, and maybe someone emerges at different times. Different guys were the best guy last year. If Key is smart, he'll settle on somebody by the time they play Clemson. Look around the rest of the roster, though. I mean, I'm not going to say they're Navy, but they're not on ACC's level. No. And I'm also, not going to say that the Georgia Tech players have the very large time commitments staring them in the face that the good people serving at the Naval Academy are facing, and things that they have to prepare for in a very real way. How does Georgia Tech pull this off if they're going to pull this off?
Yeah, first off, I apologize for knocking my mic over there while you were talking.
I just tried to keep going until you looked ready.
Clumsy Daniel, as always there. But no, look, I like Brent Key. I thought that was a heck of a hire. I thought it made a lot of sense. when he took over, they immediately looked organized. And that's what they didn't look like for 3 years under Jeff Collins. I mean, just a small thing like the punt block team. They had so many punts blocked when Jeff Collins was the coach. Brent Key said, that's the first thing I'm fixing. They didn't have another one blocked the rest of the year. And he fixed it immediately. So I think that is, they look like a legitimate football team now, right? And I can't tell you, I live in Georgia, can't tell you how many people, Georgia Tech fans I've heard, and it's funny. It makes me laugh every time they say it. Hash marks over hashtags, right? Be a football coach, not a marketing director. And that's what Brent Key is. He's an old school offensive lineman. He coached offensive line for George O'Leary. He coached offensive line for Nick Saban. And you don't coach for guys like that and be full of nonsense. He's just going to coach football, and we're going to be physical. And yeah, we might not have the talent that you have, but we're going to recruit better. We're going to get better. And the talent we have, we're going to coach up. And they talked all the recruiting stuff when Jeff took over. And it never materialized.
Right.
Their first class was better than his last class by the rankings. So you have to know what you are at Tech, right? There are limitations. The academics is a real thing. You can't just take somebody who's not going to do the work and slide them into Tech and think they're going to get into school. And if they get into school, they're not going to stay in school. It's difficult. But you get smart guys who are physical, who can be coached, and you coach them up. And that's what this staff will do. I think they're a bowl team this year. I think they're a much more legitimate football team than they've been the past 2 years. I don't think they beat Clemson. I don't think they beat Florida State. I don't think look at their schedule, whatever. But they can win 6 games and go to a bowl game, and that starts with Brent Key. I'm a huge Brent Key fan, and I think in a couple of years they can win 8, 9-ish kind of games every year, go to a bowl game. They're not going to, they might beat Georgia twice a decade. They might beat Clemson twice a decade and, luck into 1 or 2 here or there, but they're going to look like a real football team again with this coaching staff.
Yep. Brent Key, long respected down here in Florida, was legitimately seen as a possible successor to George O'Leary. Yep. When O'Leary left UCF, Key, I believe, ended up working with Nick Saban at Alabama, recruiting coordinator and O-line coach. I hope memory serves correctly there. Strong resume, ton of experience, has learned from a lot of really good, like you said, old school, traditional football coaches. And I think maybe the ceiling will be higher if you go after, some big time offensive air raid type guy as a head coach candidate. The Scott Frost type hire at UCF that worked out so well, but there's a lot of risk in those too. And the floor is a lot lower. I'm liking that cliche less and less, but I think it's pretty communicative of what we're talking about. They whiffed with Jeff Collins, and they need to go with kind of a safe bet. And I think Brent Key is more than a safe bet at Georgia Tech. Very familiar with the program, the area, has the good experience on his resume elsewhere, can bring that knowledge from outside back to Atlanta, and saw immediate results. So he's got a chance to continue that momentum, keep making things better, keep putting, like you said, his organization and just, eliminating the knot holes in the lumber, right? To be able to make sure that Georgia Tech can be competitive again. So,
and played there. He knows the school.
Yeah.
Played there, coached there before, knows the school, knows what it takes, knows what it means to be a Georgia Tech football player with all the stuff on top of you academically. Right. And look, I know a lot of schools talk about academics. Clemson talks about, Dabo talks about it. I love that he does. Some of those schools, it doesn't mean anything. They just say it just to say it. That's not at Georgia Tech.
Right.
And so it means something, and it's hard to go to Georgia Tech. Believe me, my sister-in-law went to Georgia Tech. She tells me how smart she is and how much how hard it is to go to Georgia Tech. But it does mean something there, and he knows what that means. and he knows what those guys face. And again, he's a football coach. I just the marketing stuff, they tried it, they took a swing, they struck out. Now they went the other way and got a football coach. And I think I love the fact that he went to school there and he knows everything that it means to play football at Georgia Tech.
Our next couple of episodes, well, our next episode, at least our next planned episode, let me qualify that. North Carolina and South Carolina, the last two games of the regular season, we'll take a look at them. And we'll round out the rest of the offense. Take a look at the offensive line. Most of those guys are back. Should be a quick conversation. The running backs, we know those guys. And then the quarterback, who I think we've talked about a good bit, but let's kind of catch up and recap where he stands after spring practice. Remember, our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. I would love to redesign that thing, make it look better. Go take a look at it now. You can catch our old episodes there, see our archive, and hear where we've gotten things right and where we've gotten things wrong. You know, nobody bats 1,000 on that. On social media, we won't.
I bat 1,000.
Oh yeah, sure. Crazy Daniel's the one who doesn't bat 1,000. Right?
No, don't listen to Crazy Daniel ever.
We're on social media. We won't get into what all the platforms are named, but just look for us at Clemson Kickoff, wherever you like to spend your time. And until that next episode, for Crazy Daniel, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.